Hey everybody, before we even get into today's video, I would just like to apologize for the filter that you're going to be seeing throughout this video. In order for me to, pass copyright on YouTube using, clips from a film that Disney and Lucasfilm owns, I have to put a lot of heavy filtering on it, so I hope that it's not too distracting, but let's jump into the video. Captain EO was a film shown at both Disneyland and Disney World starring Michael Jackson in the Michael Eisner era of the Disney company, which occurred in the late 80s and 90s and even early 2000s, but mostly the 90s. The Disney company changed a lot. Eisner liked to focus on what was popular in the moment to capitalize on and make that accessible to Disney fans. And honestly, it's up for debate whether that was a good idea or a bad idea. One of the times that they wanted to capitalize on something big in the moment was with Captain EO. George Lucas and Michael Eisner worked together in the 80s and 90s to bring to life both Star Wars and Indiana Jones in the form of theme park rides built by the Imagineers. January 9th, 1987 would see the opening of Star Tours. On March 4th, 1995, yes, 30 years ago, Indiana Jones Adventure opened at Disneyland. Before both Star Tours and Indiana Jones entered the parks, George Lucas and Francis Ford Coppola brought to life a vision that Michael Eisner had for the parks, Captain EO. Now, Captain EO was designed to capitalize on, of course, the fame of Michael Jackson, and in the 1980s, Michael was loved by the entire world. It wouldn't be until 1993 when Michael would face some accusations and his career would soon spiral out of control. But in 1986, Captain EO debuted, and Michael Jackson was gearing up to release his next album, Bad. The Imagineers had the idea with Eisner to put Michael Jackson into the parks, and they decided that a film with, of course, music and dancing would be the best way to do this. Now, Lucasfilm made this, and Francis Ford Coppola directed the film. If you guys are unaware, George Lucas and Francis Ford Coppola were buddies back then. The film was the first ever 4D film, and Disney boasted this fact a lot. Now, before we dive too much into the actual history, I do want to explain the plot of Captain EO. Captain EO and his crew must deliver a gift to a space witch known as the Supreme Leader. When Captain EO and his crew arrive on this planet at which the Supreme Leader lives on, they are captured by her guards. Captain EO then sings a song and dances his way to freedom as he tells the Supreme Leader that he sees the beauty within her. The rest of the film becomes Captain EO just saving the day as he and his crew sing and dance, and everybody has a happy ending. I do want to say, recently I did watch the film. I rewatched it and reviewed it on my podcast, Anycast, in a Michael Jackson series, and that was the final episode of the series. So if you guys want to check that episode out, it'll be linked down below. But I did notice that even though this is a little bit of a longer short film, it's about 17 minutes long, which I think is kind of long for, the first ever 4D show at Disneyland or Disney parks. It is largely just Michael singing songs like he would do in a music video. The plot is very, very surfacey. It's just something so, Michael can go out there, play in this pretend world that George Lucas has made and that will be appealing for kids and, fans of Michael Jackson. And then you see less of Michael Jackson acting and more of him just dancing and saving the day and singing a song that will be on Bad, and I believe actually an original song, which I think is pretty cool. I did like the film. I thought it was good. It could be a whole lot better, but I mean, I'm not gonna, compare this to any other like big films out there, but it was pretty cool and it got the job done. Now, Michael Jackson is a kid at heart in many ways, so having him participate in a Disney themed attraction didn't really seem like an impossible goal to reach. In fact, Michael himself was a fan of the Disney parks, so having him be a part of the Disney parks was kind of like a dream come true for him. It goes without saying that this is the most Michael Jackson thing there is, where Michael gets to sing songs and dance as he changes the world to promote peace and love. And honestly, if you've delved into his entire catalog, or if you're a big time fan, you know that, in many ways he had this childlike perspective of the world where he really did believe in promoting peace and love. And it's interesting seeing that this would be the big thing in a Disney film, but a Disney film that would be kind of like Star Wars. And I think it actually works pretty well. It's a little bit odd and weird, but it works pretty well and it's memorable. Legendary Imagineer Tony Baxter actually was interviewed by the hosts of Podcast The Ride on Podcast The Ride, and he gave his thoughts on Michael Jackson as a person. And you should go check out the full interview, but I am going to play a little segment here so you can hear what Tony Baxter, a man who actually met Michael Jackson and got to work with Michael Jackson on this task, has to say about Michael Jackson. Check it out.
He looked at Frank and said, "Who's the hottest person in Hollywood today?" Frank says, "Michael Jackson." He goes, "Get Michael. Who's the best director?" "Coppola." "Get Coppola. Bring George in to produce it." And then he looked at all of us and he said, "You can't tell me we won't have a movie out there in a year, because I make movies."
So, Wow.
Also,
to that, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, if you followed Francis Ford Coppola's career in the 80s, it was just him making a movie, going bankrupt, making a movie, going bankrupt.
That's true.
Yeah, it is true.
Did you do stuff on Captain EO as well? Like, did you advise on it, or did you have any?
Well, that's where I met Michael Jackson. We actually created 3 scenarios. One was a science fiction that became Captain EO. Another was a fairy tale. And I think the third one was kind of an Indiana Jones-like adventure, thing. And Michael just sort of right away said, "I want to do a space film. I want to be, Luke Skywalker." And
Sure.
so that's how that happened.
And my life was changed forever.
I just remember we filmed that at Culver Studios over in Culver City, and Michael, to get himself up out of he's very calm in real life, and when we were on the set, he would turn the sound up to like so deafening loud, deafening, and then he would just become a different person under that. But I'm really shocked that he never had a hearing problem. I'm sure he would have if he'd lived.
Eventually, yeah. Do you dispute anything about Richard's story about you and Michael Jackson, or do you have anything else?
No, but he only told you the end of the story. You got 30 minutes to go into the beginning. No, I mean, I remember sitting with him eating bubble gum, and he had one of those 120 packs of double bubble. And he had called me.
Very normal. Go on.
Yeah, he called me, but he was really. I said it's very important that to do this work, to kind of be in this industry, and look at Richard, he'd probably agree. You have to maintain some of your 12-year-old self. And Michael was kind of cheated out of a childhood, so as an adult, he was trying to recapture that. So he's eating the bubble gum while he's having me go through 4 cassettes and a boombox. He was recording everything to know about building an Indiana Jones ride, and it would get to the end and go, stop, and then he'd put, Tony Baxter's side 1, and then turn it over, and then, okay, we're ready to go. But he only chewed the gum until the sweet went out, and then he'd wrap it in the comic.
I used to do that.
Yeah, right.
Wow, that's crazy.
Now this clip does give us some insight into how Michael Jackson as a person and where he was mentally for this project. Now, as for George Lucas, one of the writers of this project, he had a vision to make this into a science fiction film. Although, as Tony had said, I believe in that clip, or maybe at a different point in that podcast, there were other ideas offered, such as like a fantasy thing, or I think a Western was one of the others. But of course Michael chose space because honestly he probably just saw it as Star Wars, that he could play in Star Wars, which honestly he wasn't so far off since George directed it, or not directed it, but created it. And as we'll get to in a little bit, it does have some tie-ins with Star Wars. But anyways, when Captain EO debuted on September 12, 1986 in both Disneyland and EPCOT's Magic Eye Theater, located in the Imagination Pavilion, guests were transported to the imagination of George Lucas as Michael Jackson sang and danced his way through space. Now, the special thing about this entire attraction is that it was 4D. meaning that the screen itself was 3D, but the audience got to experience the film with smells, physical movements, and other senses being triggered. And this has been replicated a lot. Since 1986, Disney has continued their path of 4D entertainment, with shows such as It's Tough to Be a Bug, Muppet Vision 3D, Mickey's PhilharMagic, and a few others. The most notable of all the 4D films had to be Muppet Vision 3D, since it was the final work of Jim Henson, and of course Captain EO, since this was the first 4D experience from, well, Disney, but especially from George Lucas, Francis Ford Coppola, and Michael Jackson. The show was exciting for guests to experience, and it was a big hit. The show would be placed at both Tokyo Disneyland and Disneyland Paris, but the show closed on July 6, 1994 at EPCOT, and by 1998, Captain EO closed in Disneyland Paris. The show closed over time because of a multitude of factors. Now, most importantly, the show was far too expensive to produce, and the technology was too outdated. It got outdated really fast. Times were changing and technology just got a lot better by the mid to late 90s. The show itself cost a good $30 million to produce. Now, according to many sources, it is actually not mentioned that the allegations against Michael Jackson even played a role in Disney shutting this entire show down. But it is hard to say that this wasn't a factor. I do believe that the controversy of Michael Jackson had to play a minor role in this, especially since by the late 1993, the allegations came against Michael, and then in 1994, we saw the first closure happen. But of course, the film was expensive to produce and to maintain, so I think both are very plausible. In 1996, for the first and only time on television, MTV showed Captain EO. Now, following the death of Michael Jackson in 2010, Captain EO returned as Captain EO Tribute to each and every Disney park that hosted the show before, and by 2015, the show was gone from all the parks. It's been 10 years since the final showing of Captain EO Tribute, but the fandom of Captain EO lives on. As I said earlier in the video, there is some tie-in from this to Star Wars, and I think that Michael would be very happy with that. The Skeleton Crew came to Disney Plus last year in December, and a character named Fuzzball was brought in for a very short cameo. Fans had pointed this out and some parallels between the Skeleton Crew and the crew in Captain EO. I think it's really cool, and I haven't even seen the Skeleton Crew, but I do think it's cool that they've gotten to pay a little bit of tribute to Captain EO, one of the older and more obscure things that George Lucas got to work on in a Star Wars project. I personally did attend a showing when I was very young in either 2013 or 2014 of Captain EO Tribute, and I enjoyed it for what it was. My mom is a huge Michael Jackson fan, and so it meant a lot to her that they were showing Captain EO Tribute in Disneyland in the early to mid 2010s. I, of course, am also a huge Michael Jackson fan, so getting to revisit this thing was actually really fun, and getting to research for this video was fun, getting to learn some interesting things about it. I will say I do hope that either Captain EO can return to the Disney parks or come onto Disney Plus in both a 2D and 3D version. The same does go for Muppet Vision 3D, which very sadly is set to close like next week, I think, or maybe this week as this video is going to be dropped. Now, Muppet Vision 3D will be a topic for another day, and I have a lot of opinions and emotions on Muppet Vision 3D. But for now, I will ask you, the audience, if you got to experience Captain EO or Captain EO Tribute, did you enjoy it? Let me know down in the comments, and I will see you guys next week as we talk about Space Mountain and its very cool legacy. Hey everybody, I know that I was just about to end the video, and sorry for this interruption, but I actually found something really interesting about Captain EO here that I want to show you guys. So take a look at these audience reactions at the final showing in the 90s at Disneyland. People went crazy. Watch this.